Hey everyone, welcome to a new video. Welcome to Floating in Dreams. Today I am doing a 10 palette review for you, including makeup looks and swatches of the last 10 palettes that I tried. So let's get started. Welcome if you're new here, welcome if you're a returning visitor. Thank you so very much for joining me today. Yes, we are chatting about eyeshadow palettes again. I know, it's been a hot minute, but I was doing a lot of declutter, so I didn't have that much time this month to chat about eyeshadow palettes. So I'm very happy to come to you and chat to you about one of my favorite topics that I love chatting about on this channel, which is eyeshadow palettes and reviewing the last 10 palettes that I tried for you. In case you don't know anything about this channel, then you should know that I also love trying Essence and CATRICE products because I live in the Netherlands and it's very easy for me to get my hands on those things. And I am someone who really likes getting the use out of their makeup, which is why I do declutters, but also shop my stashes. I like to go back to products all the time. And also when I say that I have tried these palettes, you should know that I have tried every single shade. So there are going to be multiple looks in today's video as well. And I won't be ranking these because I don't see a lot of merit in ranking the last 10 palettes I tried because I really need to put them up against, you know, other cool tone palettes or other blue palettes in order to really be able to make up my mind and say this is the best one. I just feel that if you just take the last 10 palettes you tried, that a ranking doesn't really make a lot of sense because if I've only tried 10 palettes that I didn't like very much, then that ranking is going to be very skewed. And I could say that, oh, this is my #1 palette from this batch, but then is it actually a good palette? Who knows? So I feel that ranking has merit, but only in certain contexts, which is why I'm just going to review these as is. I've got 10 palettes that I tried. These aren't the newest of the new things, you guys. And because I am someone with a fair skin tone that leans cool to neutral, hello fellow snow angels, that definitely skews my makeup preferences a lot as well. Also when it comes to eyeshadows, I know a lot of people don't talk about undertones in makeup unless it's like base products like a foundation, but I feel that because I have a very particular skin tone, that some things may work on me differently than people with other skin tones. That's just the reality of my existence. So that definitely factors into how much I like these products. If you like one of these products and I didn't like them very much, that doesn't mean it's a bad product per se. It's just that it just didn't work for me the way I'd want it to, because that's really what it comes down to. So let me get to these 10 eyeshadow palettes because we've got a lot to chat about. Now I've got an array here of palettes. A lot of it is indie though, because I think towards the end of 2021, like in the second half of it, I got myself a couple of indie brands that I either wanted to try or try again and go back to. And so I will be reviewing those palettes all. We're gonna start off with my 3 Game Beauty palettes. So the first one Game Beauty came out with is the Adventure palette. And I think this is also the first one that I tried from these 3. And I really like the aesthetic of this brand, which is why I decided to buy into them. And when they released the Victory palette, which you'll also see in a minute, I decided to buy the first 3 palettes they came out with because they had a free shipping deal. And I was like, okay, now is a good moment to buy into this. In case you've never seen Game Beauty, their palettes are like little book flaps like this, which I think is quite handy. Like they can lay flat on your makeup table, which is good. And they have video game inspired color stories. So the Adventure palette is a more green toned leaning one. It's the only one with a pressed glitter. And that's why I hadn't tried this brand before, because I thought every single one of their palettes had pressed glitters. But based on customer feedback, they decided to no longer put any pressed glitters in their palettes, which is great because I love it when a brand decides to do something with the feedback that consumers give them. I just think that's a good thing. So in here, what I liked about this color story a lot is that you get like 6 greeny shades. This is perhaps a bit more of like a minty blue. And then you have like some neutrals really, because you get an orange, a yellow, and a brown, and a pop of purple. And that's the way I use this palette. I did a look with these 6 green shades, and then I did a look with these neutral shades with a pop of purple. That's really the way this palette breaks down for me. And I really like the quality of this. I have heard quite a lot of people say that they're not a fan of the quality of Game Beauty, but that the quality does get better every single palette that they have come out with. I haven't tried any of their newest ones, but I really like the quality of this because my preference is a more buildable formula that isn't too bam in your face. Not what I'm wearing today. You'll see that in a minute. But the Adventure palette, I had a lot of fun playing with. The pressed glitter wasn't all that offensive, I found. It was easy to stick down with a bit of glitter glue, and a bit of finger action helped there a lot as well. I think these are really cute palettes. Do I think you need to go out of your way to try and get your hands on this? Unless you really want to support an indie brand from the US, then the answer would be no, because I don't think the color story in itself is that special. And neither is the formula. It's just good, really, you know, it's just good makeup with fun color stories, and I definitely bought it more so for the aesthetic. Now the second Game Beauty palette that I tried is their Fantasy palette, and here you can again see this beautiful mountaintop and the little warrior, or whoever she is supposed to be, at the front, so it looks like straight from a video game, which I think is really pretty. And I really like how the front of these palettes reflect what you've got going on inside. And I had heard people say that this was their more pastel leaning palette, and it's definitely true, but for me, like with the Adventure palette, which to me skews very green toned with neutrals, to me this is a blue palette with some pastels. That's the way I feel about it. And I thought that this purple shade was going to be like a pressed glitter when I first spotted this, but it's actually a really nice, like more duochrome leaning shimmer, which really surprised me and I really liked it. Now granted, some of these deeper shades weren't all that deep. However, I felt that the blendability of this palette was really nice. And since I have pretty fair skin, very light tones like this actually show up on me quite easily, so I had no issues making these work, unlike other pastel palettes I've tried in the past that kind of dropped off of my lids because I had to like pack them on so thickly that they started to just break and flake off of my eyes. I didn't have that issue with these at all. The yellow and the orange and also this pinky shade looked really pretty on. You get a really nice, like interesting white shimmer with a blue flip. I thought this was a very clever little palette. Like I said with the Adventure palette, do I feel you need to go out of your way to buy this? Is it like the best pastel leaning palette with blues that I've ever tried? No. I do really appreciate that you do get some really good shimmers in here, but essentially there's really only two. This is a little bit more satin leaning, so you do get a lot of mattes, which is not my cup of tea per se, but it's a lovely palette. I was very happy that I got to try it. But if you want to try one Game Beauty palette out of the three that I'm showing you today, then I think the Victory palette is the one. And that was a surprise to me because this palette is warm tones. And we all know that I love my cool tones. That's just who I am. It's what I love. It's what I adore. I really enjoy cool tones. However, this is a warm tone palette that does really work for me because it features one of my favorite shades in eyeshadow. It's got teals, and it has a matte teal as well as a shimmering teal that's a bit brighter, and I really like the combo. And here again, that white shade that you see in the middle isn't necessarily a white, it has a bit of a green flip to it, so I feel it can really nicely make for this palette. You know, even if you put that with the oranges, it just brings something extra and vibrant to the look. And in here you also get 4 shimmers and then 6 mattes, which for me is a much better ratio. I do feel that some of these like orangey shades look quite similarly once applied, but for me this broke down into a beautiful warm tone neutral palette and then a more interesting look with the teals, and then especially this mustard shade really brings the palette together for me. So if you were to try a Game Beauty palette, then definitely this is a good one. It's only 10 shades. And the ColourPop Dream Street has been discontinued for years now, and I feel that this is a very similar vibe to that. So if you love warm tones with a pop of teal, I think this is one of the best offerings on the market. This is something a little bit more unique. The other 2 palettes I feel are replaceable by other shades I have going on in my collection already, whereas with this I really feel that it really brings something new to the game, especially because it's so small and curated, because it's only 10 shades, and I think that that's really clever. Speaking of small palettes, and this is one I have to be very careful with because this is the Sigil inspired by Tammy Tanuka Perky Lavender Chincilla eyeshadow palette, and mine came incredibly broken in the mail. So I have been storing it flat like this, and I try to disturb it as little as I can so these shadows don't break any further. This is a Russian indie brand. So at the moment, it's going to be very difficult to buy from them if this is a brand you would be interested in, because of course, with the entire situation going on, this brand is currently not capable of sending anything beyond the Russian border. But this was a palette that the minute I spotted this on people's website, like videos, I was like, I want to try that. And then they brought it back last summer, and this took like 4 months to get to me. Not because of the brand, but because my customs office didn't trust this palette, apparently, to arrive safe and sound, which is why the 2 shimmers here are cracked. So just to make sure that we keep it nice and secure, I'm gonna no longer tip it open because I'm afraid I'm gonna break the shadows even more. But yeah, this is a 6-pan eyeshadow palette with grays and some like purpley lavender shades, and I was amazed with how pigmented these are, but also at the same time they are super soft and very easy to blend. These are really soft, very pretty shades. Yes, it's light, so for my skin tone this was absolutely perfect. I really like the look that it came out of this, and this is a palette I definitely want to get back to. I would love to try some more from the brand, but what you should know about this brand is that they discontinue their products every 3 months. So they release one of these palettes like every 2 or 3 months, I believe. They keep them around, and then either it sells out, or after the 3-month period, they discontinue it, and they do not tend to bring anything back. They also have an Etsy shop, which is what I use to order mine, because their website is a little bit confusing, I feel. And they still have all of their products listed on there, even things that you have not been, like, that just hasn't been available for a while. But they also do a lot of single shadows. So very often the palette will sell out, but then you might still be able to pick up individual pans. So the way this brand is just organized is a little bit confusing for me. And because of a lot of the information is only available in Russian, it's been a little bit difficult for me to figure out how they run their business and how things work, which is why I ultimately ordered this through Etsy, because it was just a little easier for me. But yeah, I really like the quality of this. I would like to try some more Sigil inspired for sure. They've come out with some really cool color stories, but because I wanted to wait until I knew how I felt about this one, because it was such a chore to A, buy from them, and 2, then to, you know, receive the product, I kind of held off buying any of the other things they came out with over the fall time. And then I tried some BH for you this month. I tried a lot of colorful things, like the Sigil Inspire thing is like pretty much the only thing that was neutral. But yeah, I tried some more BH. And after trying the pistachio palette from their Sweet Shop line last year, I decided to buy the bubblegum in a sale over the fall time, because I was like, I like the green one that much that I'm very curious what the blue one will bring me. And you'll see when you see my eyeshadow palette declutter on Thursday, because that's going to go live on Thursday, that I've kept this palette over other blue tone palettes that I already had in my collection, because I like it that much. This palette, it has 4 mattes, 4 shimmers. It has this, it's not even really a blue, it's more of a teal shade, you could say. So this teal shimmer is really lovely. And then you just have all the mattes that you could possibly need. It goes more lighter, more blue, minty sort of vibes. And then you get a really nice, intense, dark navy too. I could have done with like a navy shimmer in here rather than this brighter blue. And I feel that these two are perhaps a little bit similar. But overall, I really like the variety of blues you get in here. There isn't a lot you can do with blue shadow. I feel blue is a blue. You know, the minute you make it more green toned, it becomes more of a teal shade. So that's why I understand why they went with the teal shimmer. And I did really like the quality of this as well. I only did the one look with it because I like using every single shade when I use these BH palettes. But yeah, really, really liked it. And if you like blue smoky eyes, this is the palette. And then next up, I finally got to try the Passion in Paris from BH. A lot of people were raving about this after raving about the Blueberry Muffin, which for me was a bit of a disappointment because it had shades that performed very differently on my skin tone than I had expected. I ended up not really having a really good crease shade in there that wasn't a gray. In here, I do get a crease shade that works on me really well, so I do appreciate that. But here as well, I felt that some of the shades just didn't pull the way I'd like them to, and that especially goes for the berry row. The berry row pulled very pink on me, making it not work very well with these bluish and purple tones that you get in the rest of the palette. It's just too much of a clash, and it has to do with the way these shadows have been blended and how the undertone of the shades come together. So for me, if this bottom row wouldn't have been there, if this would have been a 12 pan, I would have been much happier with this. It's this row that's really throwing me off, and that I actually have heard a lot of people say is like one of their favorite things about this palette because it gives you more versatility. But on me, I could never pull these shades into any of the cool tones I've got going on there because these shades just don't have the right undertone for it to go together. So that's a bit of a shame. And then this corner over here is very dark very quickly. So I feel for me, it's like either ultra light and bright, super deep, or wrong undertone. So while I like the quality of this palette a lot, and I think that if I were to put this together with the Blueberry Muffin and my favorite BH palette, the Love in London, which was discontinued really quickly, but that's my favorite palette by BH, is the Love in London. I think I can sort of get more versatility out of those two palettes if I bring this in. So I definitely see merit for this in my collection. It's definitely going to hang out with me for a while. But as a standalone palette, I just felt it was quite lacking in what I would prefer in a palette. So that's the BH Cosmetics Passion in Paris. And then I want to chat to you about what's on my eyes today, because as part of this 10 palette review, I wanted to try some Beauty Bay palettes. I tried the Book of Magic when that came out in the fall of 2020, and then of course the Wilderness palette caused quite a bit of hype over the summertime of 2021. I decided initially to not buy this, and then because of the hype, I was like, you know what, I'll try it. The color story just wasn't necessarily my cup of tea at first. But then I got it home when they restocked this, and I was like, oh, now I look at you, I can tell that this is actually a dupe for 3 different Melt palettes. We get the Melt Gemini in here, we get some Smoke Sessions in here, and we even get some Muerte shades. That was until I tried it on my eyes. I put it in a video in February, I believe, where I said that this looked very much like 3 Melt palettes roped into one. It looks like it at the surface level. And again, undertones. This is why they're so important. And I feel very often, because I'm so fair-skinned, that sometimes, like especially these reds, tend to pull very pink on me. But what do you get if you blend a red and a white? You get pink. So on me, these reddish shades just didn't have the saturation and the vibrancy that the reds in the Melt Muerte have for me. On me, these all pulled really light and bright, and also this shade that looks like an orangey mustard kind of shade was like a vibrant orange on me. This mustard yellow wasn't mustard on me. That warmth and dirty grungy vibe that it seems to have in the pan completely disappeared on me, and I ended up just having a lot of bright shades in this palette, and nothing of the grunge was really left standing. That being said, was I able to pull stunning looks out of this? Yes. But there's another reason why this isn't my favorite eyeshadow palette, because it's cheap shadow, and you can tell. Now, if you are someone who loves pigmentation over anything else, then these 2 Beauty Bay palettes that I'm showing you today are going to be your cup of tea. But I've already mentioned today that I prefer blendability, and these are the kind of shadows that are super pigmented, and then you need to blend for days to make them look dissipated, blended, all that. It's a good thing that this palette comes with this very light matte shade. I use it in every single one of the looks I did with this palette just to be able to give a nicely diffused, hazy look to my shadows and not have any of the lines be too stark. That's just something I don't like on myself. But with this, I really struggle with the blendability of it. The shimmers in here are very chunky, very flaky, very creamy. They definitely need fingers to really make them work. And a lot of them I found, especially these like neutrally ones, those didn't have a lot of base pigment to them, so you really had to build them up in order to get a really nice metallic foil. Initially, they just go on as a bit of sparkle. So I felt I had to work way too hard to get these shades to look on my eyes the way I wanted to. I have other eyeshadows, Melt Cosmetics, that I feel blend far more easily for me, that give me much more unique looks. This just looks like a bright palette with reds, greens, and blues when I use it. And while I like that, and there were definitely a couple of shimmers, like lime is really pretty and moss is really pretty, those really stood out to me. But there were also like this shade, the Heat shade, that red shimmer here, it just didn't really do much. So for me, it just wasn't perfect. It just felt like overly saturated shadows, and it reminded me a lot of the experience I had when I tried the Glam Light Cake palette, which so many people raved about and said was their favorite palette of like 2020. And for me, it was a palette I decluttered immediately because I felt I had to work way too hard, and because of the undertones in those shadows. And I felt the same way about this one actually. Some of the undertones just started to look a little weirdly. I struggle, I have found, with these like brighter turquoisey green kind of shades. If they are super pigmented, they look very muddy on me, and that has to do with my undertone for sure. So I think if you have medium or olive skin, this is going to be lovely. If you prefer pigmentation over blendability, this is your thing. If you love really creamy shimmers that you need to apply with setting spray, with fingers in order for them to work, this is going to be your jam. If you like to just be able to slap on a makeup look in 5 minutes, this is not for you. And I feel very similarly about the eyeshadow palette that I used today, and that's on my eyes right now, which is the Beauty Bay Age of Opulence. And I had really high hopes for this because this color story appealed to me so much when I first spotted this. I was like, yes, I'm going to love this. It does have a lot of neutral shimmers in here, like almost like these two are neutrals, these two are neutrals, that is a neutral, and then you have these two like mattes to be able to blend things out with. So I felt that the balance in this palette at first glance wasn't great. Now that I've used it, I feel that that's actually the reason why the palette still works for me. Like the Wilderness palette, I feel this palette suffers from too much pigmentation, which has been sort of put in there, and the blendability suffers for it. I really struggled making this blend, which is again why I was happy with the two like neutral shades that are very much my skin tone, so that I was able to blend things out a little bit better. In here, I also struggle with some shades not performing the way I thought they were going to, based on what they looked like in the pan. I did 3 looks with this palette, and the look I'm wearing today was made using these 6 shades plus the black. So I did a bit of this bright blue in the crease, and then this navy I blended into it, and it's okay, it looks fine. It's just that this shade was very difficult to blend. It doesn't look this vibrant on my skin at all. It's not an electric blue, it looked very muddy. So that's why I also went in with the navy afterwards, just to make sure that it looked a little bit more even. And then I used this shade all over the lid, which I loved. But then I thought maybe I could use this like turquoisey shade in the inner corner. And that's where I felt like this look just kind of went down the drain, because it's far too dark. It doesn't have enough vibrancy, even though, especially like this, if the light catches it, you're like, that's going to be such a great highlightery kind of inner corner bright pop of something kind of shade. But on my eyes, and maybe it's to do with the fact that I have pretty deep set eyes, so the shade isn't able to catch the light the way it does in the palette. Maybe that's why, but I just felt that now I just have a really dark inner corner. Like that's what it looks like. So for me, I didn't love this. This shade pulled very red on me when I use it. I put it on my lower lash line, and I had to like blend over most of the other shade I was using on my lower lash line because it looked red rather than a bronze. The purples are okay, I like that. And the first look I did with this was with these teals, and then I found, oh, but we don't really get a good teal shimmer. This is too turquoise, too blue leaning, and these two shades are really lovely together, but I wanted something that would just either deepen this up or have some vibrancy. Like you just get too many neutral shimmers. So while this shade, like this palette has some really stunning shades, it's just, as a standalone palette, I'm missing shades while at the same time I get too many. So for me, this wasn't super successful, and as with the Wilderness, I feel that the formula of this feels like cheap makeup. it doesn't really smell like anything, thankfully. Sometimes cheap makeup can also smell cheap. These don't do that. But yeah, I think that if you like affordable makeup and you just want a lot of, like, if you really want something that packs a punch, these palettes by Beauty Bay are great because they're very affordable. But for me, I just want something that's a little bit more, like, just easier to work with. I don't do my makeup for Instagram makeup looks. That's just not the kind of makeup I like to do. I also have more mature skin because I'm in my late 30s, so I've got lots of texture on my eyes, and I feel that with this, I get a lot of skipping when I try to blend these out, and it's just not a good look. So that's why these Beauty Bay palettes, while lovely, with some really pretty shades in, I don't think these are going to last a long time in my makeup collection. I understand the hype, I understand why people love these, but they're just not really fitting my makeup aesthetic, and I shouldn't have bought into the hype. And finally, the final brand that I tried out was some more Nomad Cosmetics. So I bought 2 of their palettes to try them out again. I have previously tried the Tokyo Harajuku palette, which is their pastels, and then it has this entire row of these really fun sparkly shimmers. That's what everybody is always going on with that palette, but I just felt when I tried that palette that there were, again, shades that I didn't really feel came together very well because of the different textures. That has a full row of mattes, a full row of satins, and then that row of shimmers. And I felt that those shimmers, as much hype as they're getting, they just weren't my favorite. I just felt that the looks I could create with that palette, I could create with other palettes I already owned. So I didn't really feel that it really warranted keeping. And so, because I like Nomad and I really like their aesthetic and what they're going for, they're just a really fun indie brand to try. I was like, right, they've come out with two color stories that I do really like as well. Maybe if I try other color stories, I like them a lot better. I still have a couple of, let's just call it like constructive feedback for the brand of like things that I'm missing in these palettes. But I can tell you that now that I've tried the Nomad Fire and Ice, the Iceland palette, that I'm just so much more, like, I'm just so much happier with these palettes. So let me show you what this looks like. This is the Nomad Fire and Ice. I really enjoy this color story. I at first thought, those oranges, but actually that was one of my favorite looks with this palette. You also get these bluish shades over here, and then you just have these like grungy shades with a couple of pops of something brighter. This is my replacement for the e.l.f. Retro Paradise. I believe that's what it was called. It has a very similar color story. You get warm tones in that, some brighter pops, and then these like pastel-y pops. And I feel that this palette is my replacement for that. Now, I do have to say that with these palettes, I felt, again, undertone wasn't always what I had expected once I started blending these out on my very fair skin. I definitely felt that, for instance, some of these shades kind of they just murked up and blended into one thing, and they just didn't look as distinct as I feel they could have, especially that like nice teal shade. It just didn't end up looking as deep as it does in the pan. So on my skin, a lot of these shades pulled a lot brighter than I had expected. I did really like a lot of the shimmers that you get in here. However, their shimmer formula is very soft and a little bit more satiny than like those very intense foily crazy shimmers that you get with the Beauty Bay. This is the complete opposite end of the spectrum, and I would prefer something that's a bit more in between, because I do really like a foily shimmery shade. And with this, I feel that the shimmers are very one-dimensional, so I wish there was a bit more texture to go with. But they blended beautifully, and that's just what I look for. I really enjoyed the looks that I did with this palette. Yes, I liked it. Do I have a couple of, like, with the shimmer formula, very soft, not as sparkly, needs a lot of building up? Yes, but especially this shade here, I just loved. And the minute I did 3 looks with this, I instantly was like, oh, but I could put this together with that. I could put, like, the minute I see more than 3, 4, 5 looks in a palette, I just know that it's a good color story for me, because with this, you know, I could just go and do like a smoky eye just with these 3. I haven't even done that yet. This purpley shade is really pretty, and I think it could be like a good lower lash line shade with some of the teals in here as well, which I haven't done yet. this like duochrome shade with those teals, again, could be really stunning. So for me, I think that this is a very fun palette to play around with, and that I just think has a great color story that I can get a lot of use out of. My favorite of the two palettes I tried is definitely the Haunted Europe palette that they came out with over the fall time. And I keep it in the box because the palette actually looks quite differently on the front. You get this like lady that shifts from like a skull to, I just love that sort of detail. In here, we get 18 shades. 18 shades. And like with the Fire and Ice, I do feel that some of the shades don't look as dark and grungy on my fair skin as they look in the pan. That's something that I still want to mention here, but I felt that the shimmers in this palette weren't as soft and barely there as in the Land of Fire and Ice. I definitely had a lot of fun playing around with this. And I have to say, like, I thought that these two shades would be too similar, and also this orange and this orange, but in the end, I felt that they were different enough. And what I ended up doing actually when I played around with this was that I did a look with these greens and these warm tones, and then I did a grungy smoky look with these, and then I used these like berries and browns with these shades, and I felt that that was a great way of breaking up the palette. I love how we get more cool tones on this side, more warm tones on that side. You get a nice charcoal gray shimmer, which I like. I like a charcoal gray shimmer. So here as well, like I could do a very grungy look with like these three shades. And apart from the looks I already did with this, again, I look at this palette and go like, oh, I could do this, I could do that. So for me, I have just found that with Nomad, it's really about the color story, how much I like them, whether I really like them. Yes, I still have a couple of, you know, pieces of feedback for the brand where I'm like, do something a bit more interesting with your shimmer formula. There's just a lot of sameness going on, but they do make some really gorgeous color story, and I'm really happy with the two palettes I now have. These are my kind of color stories, like these like, and you know I keep saying I don't love warm tones, but if you do them like this, and I have some cool tones to pull into the mix, and either, you know, do a warm toned upper lash line and then a cool tone lower lash line, then I like these kind of things a lot better. So for me, these color stories were just spot on. They really hit me in the feels, and I really enjoyed playing around with these eyeshadow palettes. Those are the 10 palettes I wanted to talk to you about in today's video. I really hope you enjoyed it. I know that maybe these opinions are not yours. That's of course okay. It's makeup. You know, we all feel differently about things. But these are just my thoughts. Some things were successful, some things were a little less successful for me. And I try so many eyeshadow palettes that I know exactly what I like, and I know exactly when something works for me and when it doesn't. So that's why I'm sometimes perhaps a little overly critical. I'm very well aware. But yeah, I'm gonna have another 10 palette review for you in store next month. That's going to focus mainly on the Black Friday purchases I did from Pat McGrath and ColourPop. That's what's gonna happen next month. I already know that because I kind of plan these out in advance. And my aim is to do one of these videos a month. And just because we didn't talk about a lot of eyeshadow palettes in the month of March, because I was doing all of my declutters, next month I'm going to be doing a full week dedicated to eyeshadow palettes, just to make it up to you that we didn't chat about eyeshadow palettes all that much in March. So I hope you would like to stay tuned for that. I make 3 videos a week normally, so you've got a lot of content coming your way. So I hope you would like to stay tuned for more. Subscribe to the channel if you'd like to see what I'm doing on here. And I hope you have a great day and that you show up in another one of my videos. Hope to see you in the next one. Take care. Bye-bye.